Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we're continuing to move forward through another season together. As always, you can find our 100% free, 24/7, boots on the ground content on social media such as Facebook or Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Today we are talking about the Jaguars passing game entering Week 14. And, folks, it seems like it's on the upswing. It has been, I think, obviously a frustrating season for the passing game through a lot of, obviously, the early season. You weren't really seeing the volume, stats, etc. And I'm not even arguing that you're seeing them now to a degree. Obviously, the production has been better. But I think if you just look at overall, other than a game against the best defense in the NFL, in the Houston Texans, the Jaguars' passing game has been much more explosive and efficient over the last month plus since the bye week. I think, obviously, the addition of Jakobi Meyers has a lot to do with that because, you're essentially just going from the Jaguars' offense, minus Travis Hunter, of course, but replacing Dyami Brown with Jakobi Meyers. And Dyami Brown is a guy who's had a 1,000-yard season in his career. He's been productive throughout his career. And Dyami Brown, who I still think is talented and could, even arguably should have some kind of role in the receiver rotation. He doesn't have necessarily the background and history of production that Jakobi has. So I think adding Jakobi's been a big part. I think getting Brendan Strange back has been a big part. I think he has 4 catches of 20-plus yards since he's gotten back, which I want to say is the most amongst tight ends since then. Strange has been on a tear. Caught his first touchdown of the season against the Titans. He's become a legitimate weapon for them. And I did not envision that when he was drafted. I will be more than willing to say I was wrong about my evaluation of Brendan Strange. Trent Baalke was right. Great pick by Trent Baalke. Good job by the Jaguars staffs the last few seasons developing him. Obviously Richie Angulo, who's been his position coach the entire time he's been in Jacksonville, has had a pretty, big part to do with that. So I think you look at all of that. Obviously, they haven't faced, stellar defenses. The Raiders' defense, the Titans' defense, the Cardinals' defense are all weaker ones. I won't deny that. But Jaguars played some weak defenses in the first half of the season. Obviously, the 2 worst performances came against the 2 best defenses, they had played outside of Houston. So, really, their 4 worst performances in the passing game this year have sensibly came against the 4 best defenses they faced. Houston, twice. Seattle and Los Angeles. And we will see how this offense plays against Denver in 2 weeks. But for right now, it at least looks like an offense that's picking up the ceiling and is improving its overall base of play against the teams that it should be producing against. That they have not always produced against. They haven't always taken advantage of bad defenses. So I think a big part of it, obviously, is how the quarterback's playing. My stance on Trevor throughout the years has been clear. I think Trevor is a very talented quarterback. My friend Gus Logue, I believe, said it best. If you just made a cut-up of Trevor Lawrence's best throws from any given season, you can put it right up there with probably anybody else's in the NFL. He makes the splash plays required, for a guy to deserve patience, for a guy to, be worth waiting, a lengthy period of time to see him kind of take the next step. He has shown that, obviously, his whole career, but especially since the bye week. I mean, high-level throws each week. That throw to Jacoby Myers, that throw to Parker Washington against the Titans, and his sliding catch was excellent. To me, adding Jacoby Myers and his instant chemistry with Trevor has helped unlock a part of his game, attacking the middle of the field, that has not always been there for the Jaguars' offenses. And I sincerely believe also that Jacoby Myers is only going to help Brian Thomas Jr., especially as he continues to get healthy after missing a couple weeks. I think now that they have Jacoby Myers, they have somebody who can do the dirty work, in the receiving scheme, who can go over the middle, can run those option routes, these in-breaking routes, make these contested catches. He clearly has no problem doing it. He's been very effective at it. He's been very reliable for the Jaguars. One of the most reliable receivers in football, frankly. And I think when you look at what Brian Thomas Jr. can offer across from him, okay, what are some of the things that Jacoby Myers, for as talented as he is, doesn't offer? He's not really a field stretcher. Doesn't have speed on the perimeter that's going to scare many teams. Does a really good job settling in zones, all that, going over the middle, and can still create explosive plays. But he's not a guy you're lining up at X and, saying, go win downfield. Brian Thomas Jr. is still that guy. The issues he's had this year have obviously been on in-breaking routes, going over the middle, those kind of things. Now that the Jaguars no longer have to funnel those targets strictly to Brian Thomas Jr., they have somebody else in the passing game at the receiver position who can function in that role. They can use Brian Thomas Jr. exclusively to the best of his strengths. And I firmly believe that that's what this coaching staff is planning to do. Because it's a smart coaching staff, and that's what a good coaching staff would do. And I think how we see them further integrate him into the offense will be noteworthy. Now, obviously, the injury to Parker Washington on Sunday, I think, is one of the biggest stories of the week. I frankly think injuries in general are. I mean, you got Parker Washington, Eric Armstead, Trayvon Walker, and Walker Little, a starting left tackle, all entering the week with legitimate injury questions. And, I mean, that's even on top of Eric Murray's window to return is official, but is he officially coming off this week? We will find out. But as long or whenever Parker Washington returns to the lineup, whatever that looks like, Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., Parker Washington, and Brenton Strange, you can do a lot worse than that. Especially for a playoff push. And, I know you can say if only Travis Hunter was healthy, throughout the whole season, but, think about it now. Add Travis Hunter to that mix, and that's a dangerous pass-catching group. And will be next season once the Jaguars have everybody healthy. So, I think the passing game is taking the appropriate steps. The only thing that's really stood in their way is those handful of plays, those turnovers that have been backbreakers. You have one in the end zone against Arizona, takes out a touchdown. You have one in the end zone against Las Vegas, takes out a touchdown. You have one on a drive where it looked like they were about to be in field goal range against Houston, takes out 3 points. So, obviously, the Jaguars still have some things that they have to be wary of. Obviously, the turnovers have played a big role in why some of these games have been close. But to me, if they can find a way, if Trevor Lawrence more specifically can find a way to limit those back-breaking plays, I think the Jaguars and their passing game are in a great position because they have now the weapons. Now that you've added a guy like Jacoby Myers to go with some already pretty talented players, you have somebody who can fill every role. And yeah, it was obviously a pretty big projection for them to think that, De'Ami Brown could have fit that role that Jacoby Myers is currently in, or even that Brian Thomas Jr. could have done that. But they adjusted, and I think that is one of the more, impressive things that they have shown so far this season. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. My name's John Shipley. I'll be back next time.